Not the end of the season that the BYU Cougars hoped for, but alas, still a stellar campaign for Kevin Young, and it really feels like this is just the beginning.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, host of Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Thank you for bearing with me, coming from a dimly lit hotel room, but nonetheless, tough loss for BYU as their season comes to an end in a 113-88 blowout loss to the Alabama Crimson Tide in the Sweet 16. Biggest takeaway from this game for me is don't take this game as a mark on what BYU accomplished this year. The third team in the last 50 years to go to the Sweet 16, speaking of BYU, yes, they were hoping to go to the Elite Eight and match that Danny Ainge team. But the way Alabama shot the ball in this game, 25 51 from three. Good luck to anybody trying to match that mark. And if you're Duke or Arizona, congrats for them. 49% from three, 25 made threes. Mark Sears himself was 10 of 16. And bear with the Wi-Fi. It is what it is. I'm in a hotel room. So thank you for bearing with me. We'll see how far we get with this. But the bigger point is tough loss for BYU, no doubt about it. And it ends what overall was a very, very solid season for BYU. They had a 9-game win streak to finish the regular season, obviously going into the Big 12 tournament. Went further than I think most people projected them in the brackets. I was wandering around Florida earlier today and had a lady walk up to me and said, "Hey, I've got BYU in the Elite Eight. Don't have them let me down." I'm like, well, I can't guarantee that for you. But the bigger thing is that this was a solid season for BYU, albeit with a disappointing loss in the end to Alabama. Now, other thing to take away is that you look at this game in and of itself, and BYU, the first half, I don't know why the game plan said go under screens. Mark Sears was absolutely cooking the Cougars, and they continued to go underneath the screens and thought that they could get around and get on them. In the second half, BYU fought against those screens, stayed with the guys, but all Alabama really did, a couple people pointed out on social media, was, yeah, okay, they're not going to make the 20-footer three. They're not going to make the 25-foot three. You just, in some games, you got to tip your cap, and this was a historic performance for Alabama shooting the basketball. And it's not to say that BYU didn't have their chances. They scored 88 points again. They shot 45% from the field. And had BYU shot anywhere near their season average from three, they were 20%, 6 of 30 overall. Had BYU shot anywhere near the 37.8, I think, percent they were coming into this season, coming into this game with in terms of their season average from three, would have been a much closer contest. But bad time to go cold from beyond the arc. It's a really ill-timed deal, especially when you juxtapose that with the historic shooting night that Alabama had from three. So I can't be too mad about the overall output for BYU in this game. And I can't be mad about the overall output for this BYU season. Wyatt Graham is a good question here. Was Alabama using their foul to stop any momentum that BYU could get? In some ways they were, but it wasn't that they were fouling on purpose. It's just that the officiating in this game, I didn't think it really mattered one bit about the officiating. In fact, I honestly don't think officiating affects too much of games like this. You can use your fouls, obviously, to break up a run for a team, but the way that Alabama was shooting it, you could have fouled them 20 times in a row, and it still felt like they were going to hit those threes. So, Landrick, yeah, that game did not tarnish the heck of a season that we had. You're not wrong about that. Maybe the Sweet 16. I'm not sure what else you wanted out of the season, especially considering this is the first year of the Kevin Young era. I said it earlier this week on the podcast. This feels like it's the beginning for BYU. A lot of teams, they'll get to a Sweet 16 or an Elite Eight, whatever it is, whatever they finish the season with, and you look at it and say, ooh, that's a culmination of years and years and years and years of work to get to where they accomplished that. This is year one for Kevin Young. This feels like they're just getting going here. And that should be the exciting part. If you're a Cougar fan, is thinking, okay, what can BYU accomplish with Kevin Young at the helm of this program? Coming up next year, the number one recruit in the entire recruiting class, AJ DeBonsa. He was there in Newark watching BYU in this game. You got to be thinking in his head, he's like, all right, we're going to do a lot better than this year. Now, obviously surpassing the Sweet 16, that's pretty uncharted territory for BYU, considering the territory BYU's been in the last 50 years. Because I said, it's just the third time that BYU made the Sweet 16 in program history. But you can't take anything other than pride away from this and say, okay, if they can accomplish this year one with a brand new head coach, a roster that was hastily assembled, and I say hastily, it's not a dig at this roster, because quite frankly, the roster that Kevin Young assembled was very, very good. A lot of veteran talent, a lot of young guys like Egor, Demin. I know Kenan Catchings was out of the rotation at the end of the season, but he still had his moments for BYU this year. You look at a Dallin Hall, Richie Saunders, a Keba Keita. Like, you look at all the guys that BYU had, and the vast majority of them should be coming back. Yeah, Trevenel exits the program. Mawit Mag exits the program. You'll say bye to Fousseyni Traore. But I really do think that this is just the beginning for the BYU basketball program. And that in and of itself is the exciting part to consider for this team. Now, let's throw this up here from Mala. 2 games in a row, we get burned by dudes whose professional peak is an NBA training camp invite. Defense needs to improve. Yeah, I agree. The defense does need to improve. And you need to obviously be able to defend the 3 much better. But compared to the Wisconsin game, you look at what John Tonje did. Is he was living at the free throw line. I think he had 16 free throws as compared to BYU as a team had 16 free throws. That's a different juxtaposition as compared to Mark Sears, where he could have been shooting from 30 feet and he was going to bury the vast majority of those threes. That is the difference. I get what you're saying is that these 2 guys maybe aren't top tier NBA type guys, but the defense does need to improve. I agree with you in that circumstance. But the defense in those 2 games, speaking of Wisconsin versus the Alabama game, 2 different things. Because Alabama, like I said, just they were absolutely unconscious. To use the NBA Jam, they're on fire. Like that. That's the thing about this. Bama's perimeter defense here from Taylor Brinkhoff. That's a good point here. Excuse me. Let me throw this up here from that's Taylor Brinkhoff. Bama perimeter defense is impressive. Nobody's going to say it, but they were great at running us off the line. I agree. They did run BYU off the line. They were better at what BYU was trying to do than BYU was at doing it. Because BYU tried to run them off the line, but just never did what they needed to do. Kyle Bartholomew, most days, 88 points wins the game. Tough loss, BYU. Legendary performance from the Tide. I think that sums it up pretty darn good from Kyle. And hope you're doing well, Kyle. Kyle's an old friend of mine. But the thing is, you look at what BYU is trying to accomplish, and this is a good point from Mala here as well, is that let's create a legit pro development program. Well, they're working on that because, once again, Kevin Young, NBA pedigree. A lot of his assistant coaches, either G League or high-level college experience. He's got an NBA trainer. He's got an NBA nutritionist. He's got NBA analytics, all that stuff in there. Now, can the development take place? Is Egor Demin going to stick around for another year? Is Kenan Catchings going to hit the transfer portal? That's all to be determined in the coming days, and we'll have plenty to break down, I'm sure, on that front, because now it's truly portal season for Kevin Young. There have been reports out there that BYU's got just essentially an open checkbook with a blank check in there in terms of what they can add via the transfer portal. What will Kevin Young prioritize? Will it be more 3-and-D guys like a Mawit Mag to counter teams like an Alabama or a Wisconsin in the future? Or are they going to try and find more offensive complementary pieces to AJ DeBonsa and say, hey, we want to play like Bama, or we'll just simply outscore you? That's the philosophical thinking. I think that Kevin Young, if he had his druthers, would obviously be opting for both of those things, but you supplement what you can with the guys coming back. Because also the other thing about this is the success that BYU had, every guy on that roster is probably going to have people calling for him saying, hey, you want to make X amount of money coming and play for this university. And that's the other thing about this is that you look at where BYU is right now versus where they had been. It's pretty impressive stuff. So good question here from people, Ryan. Is AJ going to decommit? Considering he went to Newark to watch BYU play, I highly, highly doubt that. Like, he is all in with BYU. He's been tweeting very highly about them. People Riot says, I assume Kenan has gone by. I think Yair has a good chance to say you can sell him on one more year developing a 3-point shot. Without that, he's out of the league quick. He does need to learn how to shoot better. There's no doubt about that, about him developing a better shot. But the NBA may say, hey, we'll develop that shot with him down the line. And maybe some NBA team may say he's good enough as is. He's got to weigh all that. The other thing to consider with Egor Demin is his girlfriend, Delaney Gibb. Now, she is obviously in the BYU women's basketball program who is still without a head coach. TBD on what her future holds. So keep an eye on that as well. So that's the thing about this. And then I guess the final word here we'll give to Alex, because my internet's been kind of spotty at best. Alex says this: it's kind of wild that of the 68 teams that make the tournament, 67 will end their season on a loss. Yeah, there's just that's what happens. Welcome to the NBA tournament. It's called March Madness for a reason. It's one and done, survive and advance. And unfortunately, the dream dies for BYU in Newark. But do not let this individual game put a stain on what was an overall successful season for BYU. And I'll just reiterate my point one more time for those who are joining up late. This feels like just the beginning for BYU in terms of what their basketball program could become under Kevin Young. And that's the fun part to consider about this BYU team. So plenty to cover in the coming days. Transfer portal, football wrapping up spring practice. We will have plenty of coverage for you guys on into the offseason. We'll be here for you guys every single day talking all things BYU. So as always, thank you for all your support of the podcast. Good to see all y'all out there. Hope you're having a fantastic evening wherever you're tuning in from. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And once again, if I can pull this up here, get the right thing out of the way. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars a part of your day and being everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.